All right, if y'all in here right now, man, say something. I'm just trying to get a feel for who's on right now, who's watching. So, I'm trying to get the crowd up before I do anything. Trying to get the viewership up real quick, so I'm not just spewing this information out to people too late. I want people to be in here to listen to it. Those who want to, and even those who don't. Just supporting. I appreciate that as always. It's a new endeavor for me. Quit gaming to do this. This is something I've always loved. So. I talk about sports on the daily, so why not just fucking tell everyone about it? Excuse my language, but why not just everyone hear what I have to say rather than just my friends, So if you're tuning in right now, I greatly appreciate it. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. No pun intended, but thank you for tuning in. This is the very first episode of Down to the Wire Debates, or DTWD for short. We all know what that means. I appreciate all you tuning in. Those of you who do, those of you who watch this again, as it's just a video on the channel. My Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube are all the same. It's at DTWD EBATES. So it's DTW Debates. So be sure to follow those channels. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jacob, and I am the biggest Jaguar fan you can find. I'm not messing around. So you know when I'm speaking facts here, you know when I'm speaking at optimism or pessimism. It's coming from the heart, man. It's coming from my experiences as a real Jaguar fan, not just an outside source looking down at Jacksonville as being a small market town, but it's just who I am. So I'm going to talk to you about it. And so throughout the season, throughout the 2021 season, I'm going to be keeping you up to date on all the Jaguars news specifically, but it's not limited to that. I'm going all NFL. We're doing news, we're doing scores, stats, updates, all that on top of my personal favorite, which is fantasy football. And that is something I'm going to dive deep into. Absolutely. Fantasy football is a big thing for me. So even if you don't like the Jags, tune in for the fantasy football portions. We're going to have several segments on that. We're going to have, free agency finds and frauds, like who's for real that does perform well one week and who isn't, And we're also going to have must starts, must sits for each week for quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends and flex. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a busy season. I can't wait for it. But without further ado, let's address the situation at hand, which is today is draft day. Oh, man. As a Jaguar fan, it's a Super Bowl, You look forward to draft day for the whole season. You start out bad, and then you're like, let's see who we're going to get. And we draft, and the people we draft, we hope, he's going to take us to the next level. He's going to take us to the spot where we can hopefully compete for the division. And we've done that once, in 2017, in the last, 14 years or so, if my math's correct, so drafts haven't always panned out. And I don't want to sound like a broken record here saying, this one's going to be different. But this one, there's a different feel around the whole entire organization, around the whole city. So I'm excited, to say the least. First and foremost, we know what's going to happen with the number one pick, so we're not going to get into that yet. But not only is it just like a different feel because of the draft, because of the changes in the organization, just a complete clean sweep of the front office and all of the coaching staff. It's great. I think it needed to be done. I wish Keenan McCardell, longtime Jag, he didn't have to go because he was. I felt like our wide receivers was our best position group on the field throughout the season, even though we struggled. So, nonetheless, you bring in Urban Meyer, who is just an absolute just freak for winning. People will claim, he has commitment issues with how he just quit Ohio State and stuff, but in college you can't question his greatness and how he knows how to win and also how he knows how to recruit. A lot of the Ohio State and Florida guys that he had on his teams went to the NFL. They didn't just go to the NFL, but they prospered, There's a lot of guys like that. It's, he was up there with the ranks of Nick Saban at the time during his regimes in college. So now they take that step to the NFL. It's a lot of questions, but it's a lot of hope, and that's what Jaguar fans are driven on, is just hope, But with his mentality, his whole coaching staff that he knows personally, he hired all of them himself. It wasn't like the GM, like Trent Baalke, came in and was like, hey, you're going to get this guy and this guy, make it work. He went out and got these guys. He has relationships with them, and that's all, from what I hear in the NFL, not having been in it, it's all about relationships, whether it's quarterback to wide receiver, coach to quarterback, GM to coach. Like, it's all about relationships and how you maintain those so you get the best out of every player. And Urban Meyer having a relationship with all these guys and being able to vouch for all these guys, it's insane. You can say we have a lot of coordinators now. I mean, we hired, I think we are up to like 20-something coordinator and coaches combined, like on the staff. That includes like strength and conditioning and all that stuff too. But it just means more guys are getting more attention. So for each position group, you got 2 coaches probably. So it's like 2 or 3 guys to a coach, type thing. Similar like in schools, like it's 1 student for 25 or 1 teacher for 25 students, whatever. But anyways, his mentality, it's the +2 mentality is what he calls it. He asks for 20 yards, you give me 22. He asks for 15 reps, you give me 17. You go that extra mile, so during the season, you're conditioned, whether, physically or mentally, to go that extra step in a game or that extra rep, like just to be on top of the competition. And that's what it is. Competition is what's going to fuel this team this year. And I love that mentality from him. It's something to get excited about regardless of who we draft. If he came in just with who we had, I don't care. We needed a change. Todd Wash being out, great. We have a coordinator, Joe Cullen, in there now from the Ravens. He's going to instill the 3-4 defense, supposedly, and we have the guys for that. Our guys are more fit for that. Todd Wash was stuck in his ways, and we couldn't really use people how we wanted. So, like Caleb Von Chase on last year as a rookie, he underwhelmed. On end of the season, he picked it up a little bit, but he underwhelmed for being the 20th pick in last year's draft. So yeah, it's really exciting. And going off of the coaches we hired, we also signed free agents. Going into free agency, we had the most money, the most cap space, and people are like, they're going to be the big spenders. There was big names out there like Trent Williams and Kenny Golladay, pieces of need, wide receiver and a left tackle. We did franchise Cam Robinson, so we addressed that issue for now. But other issues we filled some of those holes temporarily prior to the draft. So the signings we had were Shaquille Griffin from the Seahawks, as close as we can get to a shutdown corner in comparison to who we have with Trey Herndon, Sidney Jones, and C.J. Henderson, who also kind of underwhelmed. He missed the last 8 games of the year, but he didn't live up to the number 9 overall pick yet. He hasn't yet. Keyword yet. Marvin Jones from the Detroit Lions had some depth in the receiver group after losing Keelan Cole, who actually I was finally becoming a fan of after he had a poor season in 2019. 2020 was like a step forward for him. Rayshon Jenkins, a strong safety from the Chargers. I like that signing. There's no, like, it's not excitement, though. It's not like, oh, my God, it like jumps off the tape at you. But he is a solid player, and that's what we need. We just need solid players, and we need continuity. And Shaquille Griffin and Rayshon Jenkins go back to high school. So, like, they're going to have each other's back in the defensive backfield. So, that's going to be great. Philip Dorsett, wide receiver as well. He's more of, the big play guy, kind of shifty. Carlos Hyde signs back with us, the running back. Hopefully he can have a better stint with us this time than before. He'll most likely be backing up James Robinson depending on who we draft. Roy Robertson Harris, defensive end from the Bears. Jihad Ward, defensive end from the Ravens. Harris is defensive lineman, defensive tackle. Chris Manhertz, tight end from the Panthers. Rudy Ford, War Eagle, safety. And Jamal Agnew, also from the Lions, kick returner. He's one of the premier kick returners. I'm excited for that. Our special teams group is always tops in the league with, we have Lambo and Cook. That can't get much better. So, you hear all those positions and those names, none of those real big name guys, which is crazy to think having the most money. But I like to think that Trent Baalke and Urban Meyer are taking a different approach than we have in the past. There wasn't a Calais Campbell signing, someone we just sold the farm to type thing. It was depth and it was value. And that was the big thing coming from being, let's see, like 4 or 5 of these guys are defensive players. We got a corner, a safety, 2 D linemen, 2 safeties actually. Like it's people we need and at positions of need. Last year, worst defensive franchise history in terms of yardage given up and points. Like it wasn't even close. Like not close at all. So addressing those issues is key. We can build off of that, but like I said, they didn't make the big signing because they know it takes time. It's not going to be a year-to-year change. Like, oh, we're going from 1-15 to 15-1 and winning the division. It's not going to be like that. So I like their approach to the free agency, and I hope their approach to the draft is the same, that they're building for the long term. It's not just a fix now type thing, because it's not a fix now thing. You're not bad for so many decades, for a decade at least, and just fix it overnight. It takes time. So I'm excited for that, as the rest of the city is. One crazy stat I heard on the radio earlier was 50%, listen to this, 50% of the ticket deposits, season ticket deposits this year, 50% of those people, half of those people have never bought a game ticket before. Never. Not season tickets, not a regular, just single game ticket. That's just the city like, oh my God, we might have something here. And that's people that don't even come to watch the games or haven't watched the games like in person, just knowing there's something happening. And that's the exciting part, is something's brewing. So without further ado, we got the NFL draft tonight. That's the big reason I'm talking to you right now. And it's exciting. Like I said, it's a Super Bowl for a Jags fan. And there's a lot of talent in this draft. It's really how teams evaluate it, the talent and the skill sets of players, whether it's receivers or the O-line or defensive ends or whatever it can be. Is the class deep or not? Like, can you wait on a wide receiver? Can you wait on an O-lineman? Can you wait on a tight end, defensive end, quarterback, anything like that? It's really how those teams evaluate it, how they evaluate each player, because different teams are going to think differently of other people. That's just how it is. Different people have different notes in class. So there's a lot of questions about who the Jaguars are going to get. Not with the number 1 pick, though. But it's just really how Urban can evaluate the talent. He can evaluate high school talent and recruit that. And like I said, he's had a lot of players transition to the NFL that have performed well and succeeded. Hopefully he kind of takes that same mindset of how would they be at the next level. Well, you're at the next level now. So now it's, how can you work for me today? Like, how can you get to work right now? Are you able to work right now? And not just work, like show up, but put in the work to be the best you can be, because he wants the best out of everyone. So, well, since January 3rd, week 17, the Jaguars have been on the clock, man. And courtesy of the Jets and the Lord himself for gifting us this number 1 overall pick. But I'm going to give y'all my mock draft for the 10 picks we have. No trades involved. I expect something to happen, but just the 10 picks we are given right now, this is who I'm expecting us to draft. So I'm going to give you other names as well that you might hear tonight that you want to look out for that also would be good fits. So first overall, no question, it's Trevor Lawrence. He's the generational talent. You're hoping for instant success when you draft him, and in my opinion, that's going to depend on continuity and chemistry. And I don't think he has issues with other teammates before. This guy's a pure winner. He's lost 5 total games since high school. Like, I've lost 5 games of basketball in one 7-game season before. Like, I lose. He doesn't. He's just a winner, and he's going to go out and get what he wants, but not at this expense of someone else's, livelihood or, skill set or, exposure. He's a winner through and through. And you compare him to Andrew Luck, John Elway, Peyton Manning as just being just far and above every other quarterback prospect in his class. And that's just how it is. So, you look at Andrew Luck. He came in to a 1-15 Colts team as the number 1 pick out of Stanford, and the following year they went 10-6, made the playoffs. I mean, that's a 9-game turnaround. Granted, they had pieces together, they just didn't have a quarterback, and I like to think with free agency and who else we might draft, it could be the same situation where Trevor steps in and just excels. But only time will tell. But he is the Lord and Savior for Jacksonville, Florida. Trevor Lawrence. We only got we got less than 2 hours, or 2 hours and 12 minutes before we hear his name called, and I'm beyond excited, as the rest of Duval County is. So now, Urban Meyer mentioned it earlier. The more important pick is 25. Everyone knows who's going number 1. It's an important pick, of course. It's your franchise quarterback that can change the scope of Jacksonville, the landscape of Jacksonville forever. Shad Khan knows that this is that type of person. This is the Peyton Manning that can hold a team down for years, for decades. But 25 is going to be there's a lot of value early on, as there is every first round of a draft. But 25 is going to be, you're questioning what position they go with. Do you go defensive side of the ball? Do you go safety? Do you go D-line? Get that interior presence on the pass rush and run stopping ability. Do you go linebacker? Do you get faster on, the front 7 when you're going to a 3-4 right now? Or do you go wide receiver? Do you get Trevor instant help like an O-line or, one of these premier wide receivers that are going to be available that early? Like, what do you do? And for me, my pick, round 1, pick 25, I'm taking Trayvon Moehrig. I feel like he's going to be a great complement across from Rayshon Jenkins, the strong safety, and he can play inside the box. He's a great tackler. He always finds himself around the ball when you watch tape. He's very instinctive, and he can play in the slot. Even he could cover the tight ends, which is something our safeties have not been able to do for as long as I can remember. I can't tell you how many years I've watched Delaney Walker, Jonnu Smith, Dallas Clark, Darren Fells, just destroy us in divisional games. And teams you're playing twice a year, you can't stop their tight end once. It's sad. So I think this is a great pick for us. I think it's a great pick, and he'll be that blanket in the back end because he has great coverage skills and ball skills, like I said. That's who I'm a fan of. You hear his name a lot associated with the 25th pick. So people are saying he might slide to 33, but I don't think so. I think he's the number 1 safety in this draft by far. It's him, Richie Grant, and Javon Holland from Oregon. And after that, the value kind of drops off for me, and I'm sure it does for Urban. So be ready to hear that name early on tonight, or not early on, but at 25 tonight. Now next is, I don't want to say it's a no-brainer, but at 33, Pat Freiermuth out of Penn State, tight end. Our tight end group is, the worst position group on the field that we have. James O'Shaughnessy, love that guy. O'Shag Hennessy, as we call him in Jacksonville. He's good. He got hurt last year. He's somewhat reliable. But he's not that red zone threat you hope for, or that middle of the field threat that's really just going to hurt a defense, He had his flashes, but I think his time with us is kind of dwindling now. See how he bounces back off injury. He'll be good depth at tight end. But Pat Freiermuth, you compare him to Gronk. They call him Baby Gronk. And obviously his old tight end coach is our coach now. And so it'll be that chemistry and that continuity, like I mentioned before, with Trevor, would be with him as well, and how he just fits right into the role, and they know how to use him already. I would love to see how that translates. He would be an immediate starter for sure. And that's what you're drafting. We have, 4 picks in the top 45, in the first 2 rounds. They're immediate starters. I feel like they have to be. Trayvon Moehrig, people say that he might not be immediate starter. He might have to work his way past Jared Wilson. I think he's an immediate starter, so we'll see. Now, that's the first inch of help we get for Trevor. You give that tight end that can block. He's a great blocker. Get in the middle of the field. Like I said, just an all-around great tight end after Kyle Pitts, of course. He's the number 1. So with the 45th pick, second round, I'm going Samuel Cosmi, offensive tackle out of Texas. Excuse me one second. Now, this guy, he can play left tackle or right tackle. Although we did tag Cam Robinson, Jawan Taylor's on the other side, and a stat that came out the other day is Cam Robinson and Jawan Taylor are first and second in pressures allowed in the last year or 2 years, I believe. That's not pretty. You don't want another Joe Burrow situation. Joe Burrow's great. He went number 1 last year to the Bengals, and rightfully so. He's the next coming as well. But he can only do so much if he's not upright. You know, you got to keep your quarterback upright. You got to keep him from taking those hits. He got injured, hurt his knee. He was out the rest of the season. You know, rookie year cut short. Who knows how he bounces back? And you just want to avoid that at all costs. So you could probably go earlier with a lineman to help Trevor, but at 45, I think you get some great value in Samuel Cosmi. He's, you know, I don't think he would start right away. I think you work out Cam and Jawan, but in training camp and stuff like that, they compete. That's what Urban wants. He wants you to compete. You know, you have to earn your spot. Just because you're this name or that name, or you started last year, doesn't mean you're starting this year. And that's probably a shock for a lot of guys, but that's how it should be. And I mean, unless you earn your role already. So he has to earn his role just like anyone else. And, you know, you have to keep your role. Because the biggest thing right now is you have to protect Trevor Lawrence. That is your greatest asset after 8 p.m. tonight or 8:10 p.m. whenever they decide to announce the pick. That's just the philosophy. Because, like I said, Joe Burrow, you saw what happened. So, excuse me. Now, into the third round, pick 65. I'm picking a favorite of mine, and this is also more help for Trevor Lawrence. He's a speed guy, Anthony Schwartz at Auburn, wide receiver. This guy, and I've watched him the last few years at Auburn because I'm an Auburn fan, War Eagle. This guy he's pure speed. Like, you watch him on the field, he just makes everyone look slow. He gets the ball in his hands. He's taking it somewhere where you're not thinking he's going to get in time, you know? He's that jet sweep kind of guy. And that's what every team has now. They have that jet sweep kind of guy, that end-around guy who's just guns a-blazing, you know, just fast. We don't have that currently on the roster. You know, our wide receiver group, it's not thin, but, you know, DJ Chark, and then opposite is Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault in the slot. It's a good group, but there's no guy besides maybe Chark that might just beat you straight up with speed. Schwartz can do that from the slot, and he can do that from around the edges. You know, he gets the ball in his hands, he can make a play, and he ran the fastest 40 out of all other prospects in the pro days because they didn't have a combine this year. So that's why his stock really rose, because when he was at Auburn, he didn't have the best hands. He's not like going to go up and snag a ball over anyone, but when the ball's in his hands, you know, defenders are on their heels. You know, they're like, oh my God, which way is he going to cut? You know. So I love that about him, and that's just another compliment for Trevor. You know, you get Pat Freiermuth, you get an offensive tackle, and then you get a wide receiver. That's all you need right there. After you got a generational type quarterback who's, you know, 6'6" and can look over anything and has a strong arm, you know, and great motion with it. So getting him Trevor weapons early and often that he can use, especially if they're both rookies, you know, I think they grow together and they can form a connection. So I love Anthony Schwartz there at 65. It's a great value for being the fastest receiver in his class, granted fastest person in the draft. So yeah, I really like that pick, and that's who I think, or I hope we get at 65. Now, round number 4, pick 106. We're going back to the defensive side of the ball, and we're going with Malcolm Kuntz, defensive end or outside linebacker out of Buffalo. He can play that 3-4. You got Caleb, Josh Allen, you know, Miles Jack, Joe Schobert. Those are going to be your linebackers right there. But after how Caleb performed last year, like, you throw him into that role, but we need depth. You know, we don't really have much after those guys that are probably going to step up if their name is called, at least in my opinion. Someone could prove me wrong, but Malcolm Kuntz, he's a great tackler. He'll be a developmental kind of guy. Like I say, he's not going to start right away, but he can develop into that stand-up pass rusher. He has those, like, instinctive abilities, but it's not technical. It's not like fundamental. You know, it's just like he just knows how to get there and just tackle. He's a great tackler, and that's a good thing to have on a team that gave up the most yards last year and most points in franchise history. Like, something's got to give. You know, I think it's only up from here, and by up I mean like the defense gets better, not like more yards for the opponents. But so you go to the defensive side of the ball there at 106, and we stay on the defensive side of the ball in round 4 at pick 130. And this is probably one of my favorite people in the draft, and might be others too. He might not be here at 130. I'm hoping he does. It's Jalen Twyman out of Pittsburgh, defensive tackle. And this guy, I love people that just are the best in the class, you know. So obviously Trevor and Anthony Schwartz is the fastest. Jalen Twyman is the strongest. He had the most bench reps in the draft out of all of prospects in all their pro days. He opted out of the 2020 season, so we only have tape from 2019 really to look back on as the closest. But in the meantime, he was working out with Aaron Donald supposedly, and Aaron Donald's, you know, the greatest defensive player in the league right now. I don't think anyone can question that. He demands double and triple teams and still gets, you know, his presence is still felt. And when you draw that much attention, you're doing something right. So if you're training with that guy, you know, I want you on my team. And so at 130 in the 4th round, I'd love to have Jalen Twyman. He's just a beast. He's just a fiery player, and like I said, he's strong. So, I mean, that just adds more depth. I don't think he will start right away either, because of all the defensive linemen we have now. It's going to be a competition, and it's just going to weed out, you know, like who's the best, who wants it more. And I think he could prove that as a rookie if we bring him in. So, add that guy to the mix, and he might surprise you. So, now we go to round 5, pick 145. And this is a great compliment for me to James Robinson. This is Javion Hawkins, a running back out of Louisville. I compare him, and I'll use another Auburn guy, Corey Grant, who the Jaguars used to have back in our AFC Championship run. I'll use that comparison. He's that kind of guy that can get out on the edge. He's a one cut and gone. You know, like if you watch his tape, he moves one way, takes one cut, and he finds his way 20 yards upfield or 80 yards for a touchdown. He's that quick burst. You know, James Robinson's not going to hit the home run ball on you. I think his longest run last year was like maybe 30 yards. But he was consistent. James Robinson was consistent. He could pound the ball. He'll get you those first downs. But we need someone who's going to break those big plays. We need big play guys, because that's what Urban wants. He's all about speed. That's why you go with like a Mogrig at 25. You get speed on defense. You know, you go with Anthony Schwartz. You get speed on offense. Now you go Javion Hawkins. You get more speed on offense. And I feel like that's Urban's mentality. He has these guys he wants in the draft, and that's I don't want to say that's one of the guys he wants, but that's the type of guy he wants. He wants speed. So he averaged over 6 yards a carry last year. I think it was like 130 carries, like 800 something yards, and 7 touchdowns in a matter of like 9 games or something. Very consistent, and 6 yards a carry, I'll take that. Yes, it's college. Yes, he's at Louisville. He's not playing, you know, in the SEC or anything, but if you watch his tape, he's fast. He is just fast, and he has good vision. Like I said, he finds his way to the holes. He makes that one cut. If it's not there, and he's gone. Obviously, it's the highlights that you see, and you're not going to see the bad plays. He is smaller. I believe he's like 5'8", so it's almost like a Darren Sproles type. So he could be more of a receiver as well for us out of the backfield, which James Robinson really isn't. So I think he'd be a great complement, and you could even run 2 running back sets with James and him. You know, you could throw him out wide and James Robinson with the inside handoff. Who knows? You know, QB read option. But Javion Hawkins, I love that guy's play style. And at 145, it's a great value. I mean, you get later in the draft, you're really just trying to find diamonds in the rough and add depth to your roster, and I think that could be one of them. He might not get too much playing time behind Carlos Hyde and James Robinson, but we'll see. So round 5, pick 145, I got Javion Hawkins. Now round 5, pick 170, I go Thomas Graham Jr., a cornerback out of Oregon. Now, this is a pure just depth signing. He's a good tackler, and he's a good zone corner. With the corners we have now, Shaquille Griffin is definitely cornerback 1. C.J. Henderson, when healthy, will be cornerback 2. I think he can still be in that role, but in his absence, Sidney Jones shined. We can't shy away from that. He had several, you know, a couple picks and great, you know, ball skills for pass deflections. Like he was everywhere. You know, he wasn't really getting beat like the likes of Trey Herndon or Chris Claybrooks, who's really supposed to be like a return man and special teamer. So this is just a depth signing right here. Another guy I like here is probably Ambry Thomas out of Michigan, who's kind of bigger. a 6-foot corner. But yeah, this is later in the draft. This is what it's not going to be as exciting. Not names you're going to know. But Thomas Graham Jr., cornerback out of Oregon. Now, the last pick in the draft, more help for Trevor here and just more depth. Like I said, later in the draft, 249, round 7 pick 249. Larry Borum, offensive guard out of Missouri. Decent size. He's 6'5", 320 plus. Big guy. He's strong, but he's not controlled. So that's where he needs to develop a little bit, work on that. He'd be a backup guard or tackle. He can play all over the line because of his size and his strength, but it just needs to be more controlled, more fundamental. The guys come into the league. Well, you go from high school to college based on your size and your ability, and then you go from college to the NFL to perfect your craft. Like, get good at your job. You're getting paid now. It's a job. You show up to work, you get better at it every day. So he can be one of those guys you fit in. You got Ben Barch from last year's draft. He'll be filling in at any injuries or just replacing people on the starting line if possible. And Larry Borum could very much find his way into that same spot as well. So that's my mock draft. We go with Trevor Lawrence, Trayvon Moehrig, Pat Freiermuth, Samuel Cosmi, Anthony Schwartz, Malcolm Kuntz, Jalen Twyman, Javian Hawkins, Thomas Graham Jr., and Larry Borum. Now, this was a solid draft for me. I did several mock drafts, as everyone did, online, I did well over 20 probably, and these are similar guys I saw available at these spots. It wasn't just like, oh, I want this guy here. We can probably wait till 145 to get Javian Hawkins. I don't know. He could go as early as 106, like before that pick. You just don't know how people evaluate them. Like I said, every team's different. Every general manager thinks different, and the team needs are different. We need a speed running back. Some guy might need a bruiser running back, and who knows if they decide to change their mind. So those are guys that I see there at those spots that fit the mold for what we're trying to build in Jacksonville and what I see Urban trying to build. But I'm going to give you 7 other honorable mentions is what I'll call them, that we'd also be lucky to hear. So Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State, another offensive tackle. He's just like a mauler, just a real aggressive, angry offensive lineman. I've seen him in mock drafts going as early as 25 to us, so that could be possible. Give me 1 second. But so another offensive tackle as well is Dylan Radins, who I could see being available at 45. Him and Samuel Cosmi are similar skill sets. Radins is just a swing tackle. He can play all over the line. Great size as well. Him and Cosmi are relatively the same height and weight. And Radins coming from North Dakota State probably doesn't have that much exposure, so he could fall in the draft. So he could be even available later if Urban wants to wait later, if he values this offensive line class as a deep one. Another one, and this is a fan favorite for a lot of people, is Kadarius Toney, wide receiver out of Florida. This guy's gotten comparisons to Percy Harvin just because of his shiftiness and his skill set of being able to catch the ball out of the backfield, run the ball. He's a deep threat. He can cut it upfield. He'd be a great weapon. The only problem is getting him early at 25 is probably the only spot you get him if he makes it past the Redskins. The Redskins need another wide receiver. Yeah, they have Curtis Samuel and they have Terry McLaurin, but they are going to need to add help for whatever quarterback they decide to go with. So Kadarius Toney, only possible way is at 25, so you might hear his name called tonight, so be prepared for that. I don't think he falls into the second round. And 2 other wide receivers I have here are Amari Rodgers and Ronald Moore. Amari Rodgers coming from Clemson, Trevor Lawrence's favorite target. Like I said, a great way to transition from one place to the next is having something similar. So you have your number one target, with you in the NFL on your team. I think that bodes well for you to develop. You both go through training camp together. You learn the playbook together, which Trevor's already doing because they already sent it to him. But he's also a very shifty receiver, and he's a deep threat. And that's what we don't have, is just that deep ball kind of guy that can just beat you up the seam. So if you watch, any of Trevor Lawrence's, long throws, he's throwing it to Amari Rodgers 9 times out of 10. It's either him or Powell, I believe his name is. So that's another name to keep in mind. I see him going, could possibly be 45 or 65. He's going to go in that range. People have him going as low as like 80 something. I don't think he falls that far because I feel like once a few receivers come off the board early on in what now is a passing league, they're just going to start stringing along. Like every receiver is going to keep going. And the last one was Ronald Moore from Purdue. This guy, I mean, you watch his tape, he's just electric. He's probably the most electric person in the draft. Coming off an injury, though, he runs a fast 40, of course, but it's questions for me. Durability. That's just one thing. You don't want to get a guy who's already been through the ringer, and people bounce back. I mean, look at Adrian Peterson. That's probably the greatest example you can give. But that's another name you could hear probably on day 2. I don't think he's a first round talent, so 33 or 45, you could hear Ronald Moore's name called for us. Now, a really popular pick, this is probably the most popular I've seen in mock drafts for the Jags, is Christian Barmore out of Alabama, interior defensive lineman, just big guy. I believe he's like 6'5", 300 something, just that great interior presence just to clog the gap, in the run game and just to force that interior pressure for the pass rush. He's a name that's very popular amongst, the Jags organization right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was at 25, and going defense, I think, is probably the move at 25. Trevor, he escalates your offense already. You can get him help later. It's a deeper draft for offensive players. I mean, the first 10 picks might be offensive guys. You might not have a defensive guy go to 11 or 12. Probably 10, actually, to the Cowboys. Yeah, and then the last guy I have for the honorable mentions is Asante Samuel Jr. out of Florida State. You could argue that, C.J. Henderson might not be the guy. He might take a step back coming off an injury. Who are you going to replace him with? Sidney Jones, I said he did step up. But Asante Samuel Jr., he has the skill set to just step in as a day one corner. He's not going to be having to guard wide receiver ones because we got Shaquille Griffin for that now, so it's a little bit more comforting. But that's another name you see later on. He could go, as early as 33 to us. So these are just other names to look out for. But besides all that, that's just a regular mock draft. Now, the only other thing you can think of is trades. Are we going to trade people? Are we going to trade picks? I don't think we trade any players this year. Last year would have been the year to trade, Ngakoue during the draft. I remember wearing my jersey for that. But as far as trading picks, you look back at Trent Baalke's track record as a general manager as the 49ers, and he's made 22 trades, 12 of which were trading back, 10 were trading up, of course. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a move during the draft. It might not be tonight. It's definitely not going to be for the number 1 pick. We all know that. God forbid. It could be 25. 25 or 33, though, are interesting slots. If your guy's gone, I mean, Urban Meyer mentioned they have 4 guys on their board for pick 25, and they rank them in order of who they want if they're available. So they'll obviously be crossing them out if they're gone and pick the very next one. But 33, I think they could trade out of, they could trade back some because 33 is a weird pick. It's the first pick of the second round. So you have all night, all day to think about who's still available. And so do other teams. You don't have those 10 minutes anymore. Once that 32nd pick comes in from the Bucks, it's over. And then everyone's like, oh, shoot, who's left on our draft board? They could get teams calling. Hey, Lamar Jackson, he went 32nd to the Ravens. What if there's someone like that at 33? Like, oh, we got to go up and get him right now. Teams could be calling. We could drop back, 5-6 spots. And who knows what happens. I think a good candidate for that is probably the Bengals. The Bengals are mocked to draft Jamar Chase, so him and Joe Burrow reunite, which would be cool. But like I said, you got to keep that man upright, or else his life's gonna be a living hell. So I think if they draft Chase, they don't pick again until 38, and a lot of good offensive line talent will be gone by then, especially in the first round. So they might trade up. That's just one theory of mine. But the only way I could see the Jaguars trading up at this point for anyone is if it's just a few spots and probably later in the 3rd or 4th round for a guy they really want. I don't think a first round trade is going to happen. You could argue instead of having 10 picks, throughout the whole draft, you get 7 within the first like 5 rounds and call it quits. Like you're good, depending on what you can trade and what you can bargain. But jumping from 25 to any other spot just doesn't make sense unless you're jumping to number 4 to try and get Kyle Pitts. That's the only fit. You're not trading up to get a corner. You're not trading up for O lineman when there's more that's going to be available. Like I showed you at 45, we have Samuel Cosme and Dylan Radden's probably there. You're not trading up in the first round. I think they're just going to sit tight and it's going to fall into their hands. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen. A trade would definitely shake things up. There's going to be a lot more trades. Obviously, the 49ers trading to 3 from 6 was a huge jump. Even though it was only 3 spots, it shook up what's going to happen. Or I don't even know if it was 6. It wasn't 6. It was 12, I think. They went from 12 to 3. Anyways, so that's my mock draft and who to hear for. And don't be surprised with the trade. Trent Baalke will trade. And I feel like since he's building for long term, he'll trade back if he trades at all. He'll trade back a few spots. Teams will be calling for some other picks. He'll be like, yeah, yo, give me your 7th rounder this year and 6 next year, and you'll go up 5 spots right now. And that'll be good because we're building for the long term. You know, you need as much talent brought in as you can. Like I said, I'm going to keep stressing it for competition. People got to earn their spots. You know, Gardner Minshew ain't going to win that spot over against Trevor Lawrence, you know. You just got to win that spot, and that's just what it is. You come in as a big-name guy, but, you know, here in the NFL, everyone's as big, fast, and as strong as you. So people got to step it up. And I'm excited for tonight. We got, you know, less than 2 hours now. But let me get into let me wrap it up and get into these questions that y'all had for me on Facebook. If you don't have me on Facebook, it's Jacob Clayton. I'll go ahead and friend you if you're tuning in right now, but don't forget to follow me on all social media platforms as well. It's DTWD EBATES. So it's DTW Debates on Instagram, Facebook. Facebook page is not yet published, and YouTube as well, which is what we're streaming on right now, of course. So the first question was Tebow. News came out today. Tebow had a tryout with the Jags, you know, at tight end. He's coming back after 7 years not being in the league. It's just, I can't fathom that guy being in a Jaguars uniform. We had our chance to get him. We got Tyson Alualu. People were like, who the hell is that? Tim Tebow, he had 1 playoff win, and that game I wouldn't even attribute to him. It was Demaryius Thomas running with the ball 70 yards after a 10-yard pass, you know. Granted, he's not coming in as a quarterback. No one's winning that quarterback job besides Trevor Lawrence once we draft him tonight at 8 o'clock. 8:10, actually. At tight end, though, like a position group that is so weak, you don't have to stoop down to bring in someone even lower. Chris Manhertz, who we signed in free agency, that guy has, 2 or 3 catches in his career, and he's primarily known as a blocker. That's not threatening to a defense. Tim Tebow's not threatening to a defense. A guy who's never practiced that footwork, does route running, you know, his hands, like, yeah, he's in good shape, but that doesn't make you a good football player. There are a lot of people that are in good shape that just can't catch, throw, or run, you know? So I don't like the rumors. I get Urban Meyer has ties with him. Like, that's the obvious reason why he got a tryout and why people are considering it, but I just don't deem it viable to have Tim Tebow on the roster. Like, it just doesn't make sense. You're going to draft a guy tonight or tomorrow for that position. You're not playing around with Tebow. Like, I just can't. I don't want to hear it. He's been out of the league 7 years, so what? Baseball didn't work out for you. I'm sorry. You don't get to just walk into the league just because your former college coach is now a head coach and get a spot on the team. I don't want that to happen. That would go against what I believe of earning that spot. Like, cool, you can look great in a tryout if it's just you. You can catch some passes with no defenders on you, no one hitting you at the line, no one you have to block. You're just in an open field. Great. Like, I can do that. And someone might be like, hey, he has good hands. Well, yeah, they're throwing the ball 4 feet. You know, so Tebow, it's not even a question. I don't want him. That's not me being a Florida hater, being an Auburn fan, but it's just, it doesn't make sense. And it's already overshadowing, like, draft night. Like, this is Trevor Lawrence's day, man. This is Trevor Lawrence's day. No one else's. Don't bring Tim Tebow here, please. Thank you. Now, the next few questions, I have 4 more. My realistic expectations for this team heading into the season. it's tough because we were 1-15 last year, worse in the league. Not much worse you can get. You know, you can go 0-16. That's it. Well, now you can go 0-17 with the added regular season game. But I, you make the comparison to Andrew Luck, like I said before. They went 1-15 and 10-6, but they had more pieces in place. So all they needed was a quarterback. They didn't have to do much more building. It was just get our guy and we're good. And that's what they focused on. They legit tanked. Threw in Curtis Painter and said, hey, go lose us some games. So my expectations, I give us 8 or 9 wins. It sounds like a lot going from 1 win, but when you look back at the schedule, we had six one-loss, one-possession loss games. I believe it was the Packers, Texans, Titans, and there's obviously 3 others, 3 of which were Steelers, I think, and Browns, 3 of which were playoff teams, you know? So, like, that's, hold on one second. You just think about those one-possession games with Jake Luton and Mike Glennon at quarterback. If you had a guy in there that could actually make those throws, they win the games. Now, granted, I feel like they were at a crossroads because they don't want to win those games because they know what's ahead if they lose. And obviously, we're getting Trevor Lawrence. But that team wasn't bad. I mean, the defense was horrendous, but the offense showed flashes. James Robinson was amazing for an undrafted rookie. And, you know, DJ Chark was all right. You know, Keelan Cole stepped up for sure. Laviska Shenault was fine before he got hurt as well. And he showed flashes of what he could do when the ball's in his hands. I mean, he tied the league lead for wide receivers for most broken tackles up there with DeAndre Hopkins. Like, that's great company, if you ask me. So my expectations are probably 8 or 9 wins, and that's without looking at the schedule right now. I know who we play, but that's just my expectations for year 1. 8 or 9 wins, you know, go 8-9, 9-8. I don't think that's good enough for a wild card spot, so I'm not pushing the playoff issue right now. Which leads me to the next question, which is how soon do we make the playoffs? As the optimistic Jaguar fan, you know, I'll debate anything with optimism. You know, I'll be like, nah, bro, we got it this year. We got it this year. I want to say the playoffs are coming for us this year. Why? The Titans, they're consistent, yes, and they're probably going to be the top dog in the division again. The Colts, who knows what happens with Carson Wentz, if he actually is that guy or if he continues that turnover train that he had in Philadelphia. I would not mind that one bit. So I think it's a great year that we're building our defense back up to force those turnovers on him. The Texans, forget about them. They don't have a quarterback. I just love watching that division, or that team, just fall apart, just absolutely crumble. I mean, that team is just in shambles now. We've been in there, but now that a division rival's there, it's like, it's even sweeter, you know? So playoffs, honestly, I give us 2 or 3 years. 2 or 3 years, and we will be competing for everything. You know, best in the division, but also best in the AFC, and maybe a Super Bowl. I think it's going to take time for Trevor to adjust. It's really just how him and Urban both, having not been in the NFL, you know, Trevor obviously was in college, and Urban Meyer has yet to coach in the NFL, how they transition. How do they handle adversity? How do they handle losing? I mentioned before, Trevor's only lost 5 games since high school as a starting quarterback. Urban Meyer, through his college coaching days between the 3 schools, I think it was Utah, Ohio State, and Florida now, he averaged like 10-plus wins. And college seasons go from like 12 to 14 games. So that's winning right there in college, you know, with 2 national championships. So how do you handle losing? You're going to come out week 1. Depending on who you play, if you lose, how are you going to respond to that? Are you going to mope, or are you going to improve? You know, a lot of Jags fans mope about it. You know, rarely do they improve. They just accept that they suck. We don't suck, man. We just don't have that fire lit under our asses right now. I think that's what Urban Meyer came to do. He came so people in this organization that are on this team that put on that uniform every Sunday, own it. That's his motto, is own it. You know, like I said, the +2 mentality, give it all, +2. That's what he's going to get out of people. So, yeah, playoffs, I say 2 or 3 years. Maybe not this year, but next year take a step forward. Patrick Mahomes, second year, he made it to the Super Bowl. Or, correction, he made it to the AFC Championship game. Lost to the Patriots. But yeah, year 2 is probably where it's going to be for Trevor and this franchise. Now, pick number 4 is a different one. How close is Washington? How close is the Washington football team? The question was really if they're just a quarterback away and why. Washington, I look at them and they made the playoffs last year in the worst division in football, so I'm not giving them props for that. But they could do it again. The Cowboys do not impress. They just don't. The Eagles, Jalen Hurts is the guy now, but they're still questioning whether they draft a quarterback or not. They're going to go wide receiver. The Eagles don't impress me right now. I think the Giants are, looking at who they signed in free agency, I think they are the team to beat. And depending on who they draft, they could have just the most firepower offense up there with like the Cardinals, depending on if they draft like Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle, one of those two, if they're available at their spot, which I think is pick 11 or 12. Because you got Daniel Jones, Kenny Golladay, and then you add one of those guys along with like Sterling Shepard, who can, if he can stay healthy, and Darius Slayton, War Eagle. So who knows? But I think Washington is a favorite to win that division solely on their defense and their running game. Antonio Gibson was stellar last year. I freaking lost that guy in fantasy so many times, I felt like, but it was only twice. Their defense is tops in the league. I think they were second in the league in yards per game allowed, total yards per game allowed, and they were like second in passing yards per game allowed. So in a passing league, if you can stop the other team from throwing, it bodes well because you lower the score of the game, which they were top 5 in. I believe they were 4th or 5th in points allowed per game. You lower the score of the game, you don't have to have that much firepower. But, you got Scary Terry over there. You got Antonio Gibson. I think all they do need is a quarterback. Heineke he showed flashes in the playoffs, but you need someone who's going to wow you, who's going to actually lead. Heineke's cool. Chase Young will vouch for him, but that's just within the organization. That's just with who you have. But damn well Chase Young will have any other prospect right now. He'll take a Trevor Lawrence or a Zach Wilson or a Justin Fields at that spot. So I think tonight, if one of those quarterbacks slides, I think the Redskins might be making a move, I give it to the Redskins and probably the Redskins or the Bears for most likely to trade up for a quarterback tonight. So I think the Redskins are a quarterback away. They're still going to be competing in that division. I think if they don't win the division, they'll be a wild card team. Out of 17 games, I say they win 10. 10-7 could be good enough for a wild card in the NFC, depending on how other divisions obviously look. The Falcons might not be good. The Saints might not be good there. The Seahawks might not be good with everything going on. Like, they kind of took a step back towards the end of the year after Russell's hot start. So I do think the Redskins, they are a quarterback away. I think that's the missing piece right now. And the last question that I had from my boy Lonnie, if you're watching right now, shout out Lonnie. Who's the sneaky draft pick? Who's the sleeper in the later rounds? I had to do some research with that because I was just looking at prospects. Give me one second. And I'm going to go with, I think his name is Jaylon Darden. I think that's how you say his first name. Out of North Texas. Wide receiver. You watch his tape. Shifty, man. Just straight shifty. He's 5'8", 174. Not the biggest guy, but shifty, man. Shifty. Shifty. He is shifty. He's just fast, man, and he can make anybody miss, it looks like, on tape. Granted, North Texas is not, one of the big name schools, but go watch his tape. Jaylon Darden. Jaelondarden. The guy, he's quick to make cuts, quick to make people miss, and he's that threat in the middle of the field. Quick slant, he could take it to the house. You just don't know. It's just those quick plays, and he's gone. It's insane. So, I mean, I like watching that kid play from what I've seen in the highlights and stuff, and shoot, if the Jags had a chance to get him in the later rounds, like 170 or something in the 5th round, I'm all for it. I mean, that guy's a weapon right there. I'd probably compare him to Tyreek Hill, honestly. I mean, he's just that kind of fast. And I'll say it again, shifty, man. He's sneaky. He's a sneaky guy and can get upfield. So that answers that question, and those are the top 5 questions from today. I'll have more on the next podcast, or broadcast, I should say. Next one will be probably May 12th or May 13th. Depending on which day I want to do it, it will be discussing the NFL schedule. We'll go break down every game for the Jaguars, all 17 of them. I'll give you a win-loss prediction, which will probably be 9-8 or 8-9. We'll see, based on who we play, what times, and where, which I already know where, just the times. But, yeah, we'll evaluate after the draft each of those opponents, who they drafted, who they had in free agency, who they lost in free agency, and I'll give you an accurate answer on my expectations then. But for now, I appreciate y'all tuning in. Stay tuned for the next one. I'll probably actually end up doing a stream on Monday or Sunday, just capping the whole draft and my reaction to it. So draft reaction coming Sunday or Saturday. Stay tuned for that. It'll be live on YouTube again. Don't forget to follow the channels at DTW Debates on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I appreciate y'all tuning in for the very first episode. And don't forget, this is going to be all 2021 season. It's going to be all year. It's going to be Mondays and Fridays, week 1 to week 17, and into the playoffs. So stay tuned. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you next time.